Okay, so I'm going to do a little video right now on some factoring techniques from Algebra 1. Number 40, you have 28W plus 12. So the first thing you want to do there is look for a GCF. All right, so your greatest common factor number that goes into 28 and 12 would be 4. So 4, parentheses, and then you say 4 times what? It's going to give me the 28W, so 7W, and then plus 3. And that's how you do number 40. Number 41, your GCF. All right, we have an A in both terms, and the lowest exponent that our A is a 2. So I can pull out A squared, and then B is in both terms, so I can actually pull out A squared B. And then the first one, you're going to multiply by A to get the A cubed B. And then the second term, we got to multiply by 3. On number 42, now, GCF are 36 and 54. Just what we did in class, there was a lot of people that said 9 or 6. So I'm going to show you if you pull out 9, what happens, okay? All right, so you have a 9, and then, of course, you have an X in both terms, and then a Y squared. You can pull that out. You don't have a Z in both terms, so you can't pull a Z out. All right, so 9 times what would be 36, so 4, and then X to the 4th would give me X to the 5th, Y, Z, and then minus 6. Now the problem, I mean, that's correct for pulling out the 9xy squared. The problem is that right here, I still have a GCF, okay? For 4 and 6, they have a common factor, which is 2. So the next step I'm going to do is go ahead and pull out, and when you pull that 2 out, it looks like 2x to the 4th, yz minus 3. And then go ahead and bring down the other factor that we had pulled out, and those are actually going to just multiply together. So then 9 times 2 would give me the 18xy squared. Okay? So really, the GCF for that problem should have been 18xy squared. But even if you pull out a 9 or a 6, you can still get to that answer. Just see that you still had another GCF you could pull out, okay? That you could factor that again. All right, on 43, there's not a GCF. There's not something that goes into both of those terms. There's not 3 terms, so it's not a trinomial. It's a difference of 2 squares. Okay, so we need to write it as something squared minus something squared. So I always put blank parentheses there, and I say, okay, let's fill in those blanks. What squared would give me 9m squared? And so inside the parentheses should go 3m, and then inside the other parentheses should be a 7. Once you have those blanks filled out, then you can factor it fairly easily. You factor it like this. You do a minus b, a plus b. So we're going to say 3m minus 7 times 3m plus 7. Okay? It's the first one plus the second one times the first one minus the second one. All right. Number 44. Again, you have a GCF, 5, so pull the 5 out. And still, that inside the parentheses will factor because that's a difference of 2 squares. You can write that as something squared minus something squared. So fill in the blanks. Okay, so x squared is x squared, and then 4 squared is 16. So when you factor it, it's going to factor as x minus 4 times x plus 4. And don't forget about your 5 that you had pulled out. Number 45. The GCF for number 45 is 3y. Okay? When you pull a 3y out of that first term, you're still going to have a 1 there. So 1 minus 25x squared. And then again, that inside the parentheses is a difference of 2 squares. So something squared minus something squared. So the 1 is 1 squared, and then 25x squared would be 5x. So factor it as 1 minus 5x times 1 plus 5x, and you still have your 3y out front. All right, on number 46, this is just a basic trinomial. So we factor it. 2 parentheses, x times x would give me the x squared. And then really what you want to do is say, okay, what 2 numbers are going to multiply together to be 63 and add to be 16? So that would be 7 and 9. And then you say, okay, what, to figure out your signs, you need to say, okay, since this is a plus, since that's a positive 63, then I know that these 2 signs have to be the same, because that's the only way you're going to get a positive 63. Either they're both positive or they're both negative, okay? So to tell what they both are, we look at this sign, and that's a plus. So they're both going to be positive, so a +9 and a +7. All right. On number 47, same idea. It's just a simple trinomial, so 2 sets of parentheses, n squared, so I know I got to have an n and an n. And I want two numbers that multiply to be 70 and subtract to be 3. So 10 and 7 are the numbers, and then you got to figure out the signs, okay? Since I got to have a -70, the signs have to be different, okay? One of these has to be a positive, one of these has to be a negative. And the biggest one is going to go with this sign. So the biggest one's going to be negative. So the 10 is the biggest one. So the 10 is going to be the negative, and 7 is going to be the positive. All right. Same thing on 48. Just a trinomial, so c squared. You get c and c. And then we want two numbers that multiply to be 48 and subtract to be 13. So two numbers that multiply to be 48, 6 and 8. But they don't subtract to be 13, so you got to find something different. And it's 16 and 3, actually. 16 and 3 multiply to be 48, and they subtract to be 13. So I'm going to use 16 and 3. And then on the signs, to get a -48, they got to be different. One has to be positive, one has to be negative. So then I look and say, okay, that's a -13. So this 16 is what's got to be negative, okay? All right. Number 49, you got a GCF on this one. So pull out your 5 first, and then factor the trinomial, okay? So again, it's easy factoring after you pull out your GCF. So 2 sets of parentheses, x and x, and you want factors of 12 that subtract to be 1, okay? So 3 and 4. And then signs are different because you got a -12. So one of those has to be positive, one has to be negative. The biggest one is going to be the plus. So 4 is going to have to be a positive. Okay, I'm going to stop right there and make a separate video. So look up for part 2 in a minute.